Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Do More Clouds Equal Better Scalability, Availability, and Flexibility? My name is Josh Farrell, and I will be moderating today's webinar. I'm joined here by Ariff Kassam, CTO at NuoDB, and Martin Bailey, Director of Innovation for Temenos. In this webinar, Ariff and Martin will review how you can benefit from multi-cloud deployments, why cloud native is key to success, how cloud-agnostic solutions impact deployment options, what's driving cloud priorities for financial organizations, and how to maintain high availability in a cloud-first environment. At the end, we'll open it up for some Q&A. Before we begin today's presentation, I'd like to review a few logistics. Our webinar will last about 45 minutes. The webinar will be recorded and the video and slides will be made available for replay. Attendees will be muted during the call. However, you may submit questions at any time during the presentation using the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ariff. Ariff?
Thanks, Josh. Hi, and welcome to the webinar. My name is Ariff Kassam. As Josh mentioned, I am the CTO at NuoDB, and I manage product strategy and roadmap for NuoDB. Martin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Ariff. I'm Martin Bailey, Director of Innovation at Temenos, and we have a small team that's really focused on research, and we were the team that introduced NuoDB to Temenos.
Thanks, Martin. So everybody's been talking about cloud for a while now. And in fact, as Josh mentioned in this webinar, we're going to talk about using more clouds in either a multi-cloud or a hybrid types of environments. But before we get into that, let's make sure we all understand and agree on why cloud is important. This survey by McKinsey surveyed CIOs from various top companies. And they all agree that cloud is important, is crucial for their IT modernization efforts. And the top factor was agility. And this is especially true in today's situation with COVID. There are companies now that are trying to reduce their costs, and there are other companies who are trying to work around the clock to keep up with the demand and surge for their products. And agility is what's going to get these companies through. It's going to get all our companies through this difficult times, right? Those companies that are agile enough to adapt to the new environment will be able to position themselves well when the situation ends and be stronger for the outcomes. Those companies that can adapt quickly enough will be in a harder situation and have a harder time to come out of this downturn in this particular environment. And so cloud is crucial for enabling agility for companies. For example, if you need to quickly ramp up production or availability of a service for your customers, the cloud enables you to spin up resources quickly within minutes, right? Unlike traditional enterprises that it may take weeks or months to deploy new services within an environment. But while we've been talking about cloud for a while now, really it's just the start of the journey. There are we all hear about the internet companies like Netflix, Facebook. Those companies were built and born in the cloud era, so they're already in the cloud, right? But for traditional enterprises, they've only really scratched the surface, maybe moved 20-25% of their workloads to the cloud. And those are really just sort of the easier workloads, so workloads that have no dependencies or are simple, or maybe even a new application that they're building out could be started in the cloud, right? But there's still a ton of other applications and workloads that are still on premises, right? And it could be either the complexity of the workload, the dependencies in that environment, the specialized hardware maybe requirements, whether that's a mainframe or specific clusters, or it could be security, right? All those things may be impacting how hard or difficult it is to do either a lift and shift or move to the cloud for that environment, right? And so we are in a situation where companies have a mixture of deployments, right? Some of the workloads are on premises, some of the workloads are in the cloud, and we will be in this hybrid mode or mixed mode for a while now, because some of these workloads, it's going to take a while for them to move to the cloud. Or maybe they may never move to the cloud, right? There could be regulatory or even, again, security reasons why certain things you don't want to move to the cloud. And so there will be a portion of workloads still staying on premises. But for the most part, the majority of workloads will move to the cloud. And again, this idea of multiple clouds or hybrid environments has been shown in various surveys. This one's here from RightScale, their 29 State of the Cloud report. And it shows that the vast majority of companies are already using multiple clouds, right? And in fact, their respondents are saying almost 5 different cloud providers that they're using. And that could be a mix between the public clouds as well as some private clouds that they may be evaluating. And even in those, the multi-cloud users, right, hybrid is a vast majority of usage, right? In this case, 58% of companies have some sort of hybrid deployment. Some of this multi-cloud can be born sort of organically, right? As departments want to start deploying in the cloud, each department may pick a different cloud, right? So one department may pick AWS, another cloud might pick Azure, or another department may pick Google, right? And organically, you get multiple cloud deployments just because there's preferences within each group or business units, right? But this is the new normal, and this is where you can actually get a significant amount of benefits by having a strategy on deploying in multiple clouds and or hybrid models, right? So it's essential for companies, even though they may have organically started going into multiple clouds, I think it's essential for companies to think through and build out a real strategy for leveraging hybrid and multiple cloud deployments. So why is multiple clouds? Why are we suggesting that multiple clouds are advantageous, right? First and foremost, it's cloud agnostics, right? When you deploy an application into one cloud, right, and the customer ties and leverages the various services within that cloud, you're sort of beholden to that cloud, right? So as that cloud changes solutions or services, or as it increases prices, you're sort of locked into that cloud. That application is fixed into that cloud because it was hardwired to the services and the systems in that cloud. If you think about sort of upfront, if you think about being cloud agnostic, right? If you think about leveraging specific services in the cloud, but building services in a way that you can leverage other cloud services in other clouds, you can build a system that is cloud agnostic, that gives you more agility, and allows you to be able to change rapidly in case you need to switch cloud providers. Another advantage is best-in-breed solutions and services, right? Each cloud, it's a race for services in every cloud, right? And the more services that the cloud provides, the more customers will migrate their on-premises services to the clouds. But each cloud provides has different levels of services. So with a multi-cloud strategy, you can think about leveraging the best service in a specific cloud and leveraging each cloud for their services that you need from that cloud. With a multi-cloud strategy, you're also providing flexibility and future-proofing, right? If something in the future changes, if a new regulatory requirement comes in, or a cloud service drops a particular service or increases their price in a way that that makes them more expensive, a multi-cloud strategy and a multi-cloud solution allows you to move things around and provides flexibility and future-proofing. Also, cost efficiency, right? So we're already seeing cloud providers compete at commodity prices for compute and storage, right? It's happening now, and it will continue to happen, and it will continue to happen with more and more services as these cloud providers compete for customers. And so not a lot of companies are doing this, and this is a fairly advanced type of multi-cloud strategy, but you can think about an arbitrage of cloud services. you can think about spot pricing and say, okay, what cloud has the cheapest price for me today, and I'll deploy my service in that cloud. And then maybe tomorrow it changes, and so maybe you deploy that service differently, or move it to a different cloud tomorrow, right? Again, this is an advanced capability, but it is something that's enabled with a multi-cloud strategy. And last but not least is availability and reliability. We've all witnessed and all heard of events where services in a particular cloud have been unavailable, whether that's for a few minutes or whether it's been for hours, right? At cloud scale, it's when things fail, not if they fail, right? And you can have failures in particular regions, in availability zones, or across the cloud, right? And for financial services, the loss of availability is not an option. In today's world, everything needs to be up 24/7, and customers need to be able to access their financial information at all times. You cannot suffer an outage, even if it's not your fault, even if it's the cloud provider's fault. You cannot suffer an outage. And so the ability to deploy a service across multiple clouds protects customers from an outage in any one service. So if one particular cloud service has a hiccup, has a blip in loss of service, your customers never know, right? Because you're still actively working and using the other cloud provider, which is still available. So a multi-cloud strategy provides the best availability story for your customers. There are multiple terms here, and we've sort of talked about multi-cloud and we've talked about hybrid. So I want to be very specific to make sure that we all understand what we're talking about when we talk about hybrid and multi-cloud and cloud agnostic. Right? So there's various ways you can deploy solutions, and so here's 4 different ways that we talk about. The first one is in the top left. This is what I refer to as single cloud. Right? So I've got an application. That application has various different environments through dev, test, production, and a DR site. In this particular diagram, I've got production running. The application is running in production within the data center, but I did all my development, I did all my testing in the cloud, and I've got a DR site in the cloud, in one specific cloud, right? So I'm cloud enabled, but I'm cloud enabled in one particular cloud. If I move down and go to the bottom left, if the company has a multi-cloud strategy and they build that strategy up front as they're developing the application, they can get to what we can call as cloud agnostic. Right? Cloud agnostic means I can deploy my application in any cloud that I choose, or any cloud that I decide to support. In this case, there's 2 clouds, right? So in this particular diagram, development is running in one cloud, and the DR site and test is running in another cloud. These are all separate environments. They're all self-contained, but I've got different environments running in different clouds. And I can choose to mix and match those environments to specific clouds as I see fit. Right. So for example, prod, dev, and test could be in one cloud and DR just in another cloud, or I can mix and match. But being cloud agnostic gives me that flexibility. The next option is hybrid, right? So the top right. This is different from either single cloud and cloud agnostic, right? This is significantly different. In both single cloud and cloud agnostic, I've got a separate prod environment, and I've got a separate DR environment, right? They're your typical separated environments, and in case production fails, then DR can be spun up and used. So DR is always an insurance policy. It's always there in case the production environment fails. Okay. With hybrid, I've got production in 2 different locations up at the same time, right? So specifically with hybrid, I've got production running within the data center as well as in the cloud. And you can see the connection between the 2. There isn't a DR site in the cloud, right? Because I'm running that production site as well in the cloud, right? And so if I have any failures in any one of those environments, the other environment is there to continue operation. right? So it's active, active, right? The two production environments are connected. There is processing and data being exchanged between the two, right? The advantage of a hybrid model is I can potentially use a lot of different use cases. I could think about a burst into the cloud. So I could be running all my general workloads, day-to-day workloads in the data center. And it's got capacity for what I believe to be the traditional and steady state of workload for my application. But in case there's a surge, if there's a surge, I have the capacity to burst and spin up resources in the cloud and automatically take advantage of that surge in demand without any loss of service or without any downtime. I could also use production as a transition. I can use the hybrid model as a transition to the cloud. I'm running some services on premises as well as in the cloud, and I can slowly migrate more and more services and systems to the cloud without sort of a lift and shift. That's the advantage of the hybrid model. Multi-cloud is similar to hybrid, but you don't have anything on premises. You don't have anything in your data center. You're actually leveraging multiple deployments across multiple clouds, right? And so again, I've got production running in 2 different clouds at the same time. This provides the best availability for my customers in case any one cloud has a service outage, right? I can scale up in each of these clouds individually. I can potentially use more in one cloud today and more in another cloud tomorrow. Again, this idea of arbitraging pricing between the different clouds. But multi-cloud is sort of the nirvana of environments. It allows you a lot of flexibility. It allows you a lot of choice and take advantage of a lot of different models by just having a multi-cloud strategy. With that, I will transition over to Martin.
Thanks, Ariff. So to focus this conversation a bit more on the banking industry, there's a lot of challenges kind of facing banks from demanding customers. So customers are getting more sophisticated, they're getting more used to mobile digital apps. So their expectations have changed, and also they can be more impatient with what they consider poor service or poor interface or whatever. At the same time, you've got a load of new competition that's sprung up. So lots of brand new banks, lots of startups who have the advantage of building their systems from the ground up using very modern technology and can produce a very compelling offering, which is obviously tempting for all those customers who are more demanding. At the same time, you've got the constant treadmill of regulation. So the regulators never stand still. They're always looking to come up with new legislation that makes sure the industry is run better and better. And you've also got the challenge of the market conditions. So this year we've got the COVID crisis, but what the last decade and a half has told us is that we're never too far away from a crisis. So obviously that causes market volatility, economic slowdown, and that brings lots of challenges for banks. So to focus in on one aspect of the regulation, which is open banking, which is kind of happening around the world. It's pretty much already happened in Europe. It's starting to take shape in the Americas, and it's really spreading around the world. So what this is doing is basically driving a wedge between manufacturing, how you actually run products and how they work and that kind of thing, and distribution, so how you actually get those products to the customers in the market, how you sell them, how you service them. So what we're going to see more and more of really is lots of distributors who are selling products from lots of manufacturers. So instead of purely offering banking products from one single banking institution, these distributors will offer a range of products from lots of different manufacturers. Also, manufacturers will be able to get their products to market via lots and lots of distributors. And we've seen this in many other industries. The whole value chain is very much separating into distribution and manufacturing. And if we focus on the manufacturing, that's really going to commoditize and start scaling up. And if we're going to commoditize something, we really want to run it at the cheapest cost possible. And the cheapest way to run a system like that is in the cloud. So because of that split between distribution and manufacturing, when you look at the Temenos product offerings, the two main product offerings are Temenos Infinity for the digital front office or for distribution, and Temenos Transact for core banking, which is the manufacturing side. So all of these products, we've always believed in offering our customers choice in terms of how they run our software. So traditionally, we've offered support for lots and lots of different operating systems, lots of different middleware, lots of different databases, etc. So with the move to cloud, we wanted to offer the customers that same kind of choice. So we've settled on three kind of cloud providers: Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS, and Google Cloud Platform. Customers can run our software in any of those clouds. And we also have a software as a service offering where, if the bank doesn't want to run the software themselves, we can run it for them. And when we offer our customers that choice, it's important that we're not offering the lowest common denominator. So in other words, it'd be very easy to run across all the different clouds, but not use any of the specific features of that cloud. But we want to offer our customers the best of each cloud, depending on which one they choose. So we want to be cloud agnostic. You can run on multiple clouds, but we also want to be cloud native. So for each one of those clouds, we take a good long look at the services they offer, where they're strong, what should we really leverage and what should we really take advantage of. So we exploit cloud managed services for all kinds of things, such as the API gateway, the Kubernetes and Docker administration, the middleware, also for messaging, service mesh, and also microservices orchestration and serverless as well. So the most compelling reason to move to these cloud environments, I think, is cost. The efficiency in which you can run on these different platforms is astonishing when you compare it to a traditional on-premise deployment. When you run on premises, you kind of have to scale for the peak, particularly if you're using a monolithic single-site database. Scaling that database is not trivial. So you kind of have to size for your peak load, which means that most of the time, so during your daily running of your banking operations, you're kind of just ticking over on that hardware. So you're not really exploiting the hardware itself, and you only really exploit it when you scale up to your peak loads, either at end of day, end of month, or end of year. Whereas when you run in the cloud, you can elastically scale, especially with a database like NuoDB. You can scale out as load increases, and probably more importantly, you can scale back in again when that load goes away, and that offers staggering savings. So the initial test we did on NuoDB showed it was pretty much half the cost, and then when you take into account that you elastically scale for the load, then you can kind of looking at savings of up to 10 times what you would traditionally look at for running the software on site with a single site database. And although the cloud providers, go to great lengths to make sure there is a huge amount of redundancy in the architectures that you run on cloud, cloud down events do still happen at this kind of scale. It's almost inevitable, and we've actually seen it. We've seen multiple cloud down events in the kind of 8 to 10 years that we've been offering cloud software. So regulators more and more are saying to banks that you must be able to continue offering service if your cloud provider is unavailable for some reason. So understandably, banks are coming to us and saying, how do we run active cross cloud? We've actually run a project with one bank to prove this, and we stood up Transact in two different clouds, active. So it's the same logical database, the same logical application, and we simulated one cloud going down, and seamlessly we switch over to the other cloud, and we scale up to handle the load, and all of this with zero downtime, so zero loss of service, which is a really powerful deployment model. And of course, when the other cloud comes back, everything rebalances. So to kind of sum up, we're really looking at a revolution in banking software because of the forces that are shaping banks at the moment, because of what's going on in the industry. Really, we're looking at several seismic shifts. So moving away from kind of traditional kind of project-led IT deployment, which takes kind of months, to more, DevOps, where you're coding changes in the morning, deploying in the afternoon, production in the evening. Moving from on-site hardware to cloud-based. Moving from monolithic applications to more distributed containers and microservices that can be independently scaled. Moving from a single site database that can only really be scaled up in terms of hardware to a distributed database that can be scaled out, all online with no downtime. And moving from rigid interfaces to open APIs. And with that, I'll hand back over to Ariff to continue the story.
Thanks, Martin. So as Martin talked through how Temenos has adopted this cloud-agnostic and cloud-native strategy for their software, and they talked about how they're leveraging a distributed database to achieve the multi-cloud capabilities that he talked about. I'd like to introduce everybody to NuoDB. Right? So NuoDB is a cloud-native, cloud-agnostic distributed SQL database for transactional workloads. And NuoDB is very similar to running Oracle or SQL Server or Postgres, right? But we started and we've been built as a distributed system, and so naturally we have this idea of a distributed environment. So if you take a look at a traditional database, right? So the diagram here, the left-hand side represents a traditional database. A traditional database does two things. It does query processing and it does storage management at a very high level, right? The innovation that NuoDB has is that we've taken those two services, and like a modern architecture, a modern big data architecture, we've separated those services. We have a compute layer and we have a storage layer, very similar to a lot of modern architectures, modern data architectures these days, right? So our compute layer is where all the SQL execution happens, right? It's a in-memory, memory-centric system, right? So it's very fast, low latency queries. And then we've got a storage layer, and our storage layer manages obviously durability and making sure that that data is available in case of any sort of failure. And that storage could be cloud storage, it could be local disks, it could be a lot of different types of storage models. So that's the innovation that NuoDB provides. What does that mean for customers, right? What does that mean for you, right? It means this idea of scale in, scale out, right? As Martin mentioned, right? Traditionally, if you're deployed Temenos on Oracle on premises, you have to size your Oracle system for your peak workload, whether that you believe that to be the end of year or end of month, or potentially you're growing your customers and you think in 2 years you're going to have X million customers, right? And so you need to size your system day one to meet a demand a future demand that may or may not happen. But you are only utilizing maybe a small percentage of that server for most of that time. And then eventually, maybe in a few years, you'll get to what you've actually sized the system for. That is a colossal waste of resources, and not even to mention the fact that you need to have an HA system and you also need a DR system. Right? So you've got 3 systems which are underutilized. In a cloud-native system, right, a system that's built for the cloud, those can dynamically scale in and out as you need them, right? And so same thing with NuoDB, right? You can start with a very small deployment of NuoDB and burst it out for your end of month processing and take it away when you don't need it anymore. And as your client base grows, as your customers grows, you can add more and more processes to the database to grow as you need it, not for a future event. The other great thing about a distributed database and a distributed system, think of load balancers, think of web servers, right? They're all distributed. The loss of any one of those services has no impact to the availability of that service, right? Same thing with a distributed database. If I lose a node, if I lose a couple nodes, it doesn't matter. The service is still up and running. Customers can still access my data, or their data, sorry. Right? That's how you get this idea of continuous availability, both for planned and unplanned outages. You can do rolling upgrades. You can do rolling migrations. You can do rolling scale in and scale out with no loss of service. Right? NuoDB also gives you choice, right? We've got customers running on physical hardware on premises, on VMs. We also have customers running in the cloud, right? Either on standard cloud boxes, EC2 instances, or within containers. So just like Temenos provides flexibility of components and environments, NuoDB also gives you that flexibility of deploying in different environments. And all this is just a standard ANSI SQL database. It looks, breathes, feels, operates, can be operated by your DBAs just like a standard Oracle database. So as we talked about the benefits, right? So again, distributed architecture, NuoDB was built as a distributed system and then added SQL to it. It's not a single node, single server database that we figured out how to add distribution to it. That generally doesn't work, right? Oracle's been trying to do it for decades. So has Microsoft. They've never really succeeded, right? You need to start with a distributed system and then add a database to it, not the other way around. And so NuoDB is built on a modern architecture. It's not 30 years old like Oracle or 40 years old like Oracle. Right? The biggest benefit for customers is this idea of active-active, right? As Martin mentioned, we do have a customer that is deployed Temenos across 2 different clouds, right? They did it for regulatory reasons, but the benefit for them is this idea of availability. The outage of any one cloud or any other service interruptions does not impact their customers. It's always there. There is no idea of failover. Like in traditional databases, you have a master or an active system, and then you've got passive systems waiting for a failover, waiting for that first primary system to fail, and then they switch over to the failover system. There is no concept of failover in a distributed environment. We talked about scale out. This is key for TCO, for reducing your TCO. We've got a number of different customers that are growing their systems as they need it. They're not, the concept of pre-provisioning and over-provisioning doesn't exist anymore in these environments. They add servers or add nodes or add capacity as they need it, as their customer base grows. And they can take it away if things slow down, or if they've got an unexpected surge, like what's happening today. They need to quickly scale up. They can do that, right? In the cloud, they can do that within minutes, right? Still, if our customers running on premises, they can still add more servers if they already have the systems provisioned or available for them to provision onto. We haven't talked a lot about operations in this particular talk, right? But NuoDB supports Kubernetes. There are things called operators, which automate standard day-to-day tasks for managing a database. Everything from deployment to backup and just standard maintenance tasks required for databases. And so again, we're trying to provide you with the most modern database that provides the benefits that you need at the lowest cost, right? And the automated operations is a big benefit for a lot of our customers. They can support multiple databases with a single DBA. NuoDB is also a dynamic caching system. So again, for a database, there's a few things that have to happen. It has to be there, it has to be available, data has to correct, and then always performance. Everything is all about performance for a database, right? And so NuoDB is a memory-centric database. What that means is that TE layer, that caching layer that I talked about, that's fully in memory, right? And what that allows you to do, because it's distributed, is to put data close to your application. That reduces the latency for all queries, right? And so you can dynamically increase query capacity by deploying more transaction engines, which are fully in memory, that enable this idea of dynamic caching to optimize query performance. With that, just want to sort of summarize NuoDB. We are, like I said, a modern database, a database to build your future on, right? First and foremost is the idea of active-active, the availability that we provide. In this day and age, you cannot have an outage, right? Your financial customers, your customers need to be able to access the financial systems and information. They can't tolerate an outage. Whether that outage is because of the cloud provider, it doesn't matter. It's your service that's running there, right? And so you need to ensure availability for all sorts of failure modes, whether that's both planned, whether it's a migration or upgrade, or unplanned, whether it's a process, a node, or a cloud outage. You need to plan for those, and you need to make sure that your system's available. Scalability is all around TCO reduction, right? The ability to meet your performance demands at the lowest cost with the lowest number of resources being used. And that's all, it's all about scalability and dynamic scalability, both in and out. And then flexibility. Both Temenos and NuoDB allow you to run your applications, whether that's on premises, whether it's in cloud, whether it's hybrid, whether it's on containers, whether it's on VMs. Again, it's your choice on how you want to deploy the environment. So in summary, hybrid and multi-cloud environments are here, and they're the sort of the common deployment models for years to come, right? They will be here just out of necessity of how slow it is to migrate stuff to the cloud, but it's also there to take advantage for both cost savings, availability, and just changing regulatory requirements, right? Take advantage of the fact that you will be in a hybrid mode for a while now, and turn that into an advantage on how you can leverage that to reduce costs and provide better flexibility, right? And it all starts with cloud-agnostic and cloud-native solutions, right? Both Temenos and NuoDB are both cloud-agnostic and cloud-native, right? They allow you to do scalability, they provide scalability, availability, and flexibility. With all that said, you don't have to wait until you're in the cloud to take advantage of NuoDB, right? As I mentioned earlier, NuoDB supports deployments both on premises and VMs on physical. So you could get started today by taking your T24 Temenos Transact system and migrating to NuoDB as the database, right? that will enable you to have benefits of availability and scalability at your database tier on premises. And then as you get ready to move to the cloud, as you start moving Temenos to the cloud, you can easily move NuoDB with it. There is no lift and shift of a database. There's no migration of data. You can slowly deploy new nodes in the cloud as you spin up new D24 instances or transact instances in the cloud. You can slowly shift those that process into the cloud and either keep a hybrid model or move and switch into all in the cloud. So you can get started with NuoDB today. This webinar is a series. The next one is the transition to the cloud without compromises, and there's a link here if you're interested in that. There are also 2 white papers here linked that might be of interest if you're interested in getting some more information about both NuoDB and Temenos. And lastly, I want to point out that NuoDB also has a community edition. The community edition is a free to use, free to download and free to use version of NuoDB. There are some limitations in terms of how large you can scale out the cluster of NuoDB, but it's fully functional. And it's a great way to start using NuoDB and getting used to and proving out NuoDB's capabilities in your environment. With that, I will transition it over back to Josh.
Thanks, Ariff and Martin. We do have a few minutes left here. We've got a couple of questions that have been submitted. So if you guys are up for it, Ariff, the first one is for you. You mentioned Oracle, SQL Server, Postgres in terms of how NuoDB works similarly to. But how does NuoDB compare to MongoDB or Cassandra, which also support multi-cloud deployments?
Yeah, that's a good question. We didn't really touch on sort of those other databases. So Mongo and Cassandra and a few others, they're classified as what is referred to as NoSQL databases, and they are distributed like NuoDB. But the key difference between NuoDB and those other NoSQL databases like Mongo and Cassandra is that they are eventually consistent. And for a number of use cases, IoT, logging, there's a lot of use cases that can take advantage of a NoSQL, eventually consistent database like Mongo. But if you are working with financial or transactional data or data that has to be consistent, like bank balances or payments, it's very difficult to use a NoSQL database. It requires a lot of work on the application side to be able to account for the data inconsistency that could occur within a distributed NoSQL database like Mongo or Cassandra. So the biggest difference between Mongo and NuoDB is the consistency that NuoDB provides. It looks and feels just like Oracle, whereas Mongo requires a migration of the application to support the Mongo API as well as the differences in consistency.
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate that. Second question here, Martin, is for you. Supporting multiple clouds must be quite expensive. How do you do it while controlling costs at the same time?
Thanks, Josh. That's a good question. So we've got a long history of being platform independent. So, we are very used to understanding what's involved in running on various different proprietary platforms. So what we tend to do is we tend to build lots of abstraction layers so that we are not completely tied into any underlying service, and we can switch it out quite easily. And in that way, we can kind of keep the cost of supporting these multiple platforms, much lower than a linear cost per platform.
Okay, thank you. I guess this next one is probably for both of you guys. So maybe, Martin, I'll stick with you. But the question is, we heard about AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform in the presentation. Do you have plans to support any other clouds?
Yeah, so the 3 main clouds are obviously the priority for us to make sure that we get the maximum market coverage. But we're ready to support other choices if our customers want to take us in that direction. So we're already talking to, for example, Ali Cloud for the Far East, and also other big technology partners like IBM and Oracle. So, if a customer wants to run on a different cloud, they just need to talk to us, and we can make that happen.
Okay, great. Ariff, how about NuoDB?
Yeah, similar to what Martin said, obviously the majority of our customers are in the big three: Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. But NuoDB, there's nothing specific to those clouds that we require, right? So NuoDB can run on Ali Cloud or other clouds, IBM's cloud, or obviously not Oracle's, but the other clouds. We can easily support them. Again, it's a question about customer demand, and if the customers are wanting us to support those clouds, then we will definitely be able to do that.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm keeping an eye on time here, and I think with that we're going to wrap. So, Ariff, Martin, thank you both. And for any other questions that we didn't have a chance to get to from the audience, we'll make sure we follow back up and address those for you. So again, Ariff, Martin, thanks for a great presentation. Thank you to everybody who joined our session. We hope you found today's webinar informative, and that ultimately we helped answer the question that yes, more clouds can offer better scalability, availability, and flexibility. For any more information, please visit nuodb.com or temenos.com. Thank you again for attending. This will conclude today's webinar. Thank you.